My name is Linda, and Shanae and I were colleagues together, and we're good friends. The story that I have with Shanae has to do with my son. He's a teenager now, and like a lot of teenagers, he doesn't communicate with everyone very often or for long lengths of time. There's big pauses in his communication. And then as his mother, I used to kind of worry about that, the way that he didn't have a back and forth very well with people. There wasn't a real dialogue going on. And when I was starting to worry about that was a time when Shanae and I were working together. And as I got to know her, I saw some things in Shanae, that her analytic mind, that reminded me a little bit of my son. And I would talk to her sometimes about his issues or whatever was on his mind, or questions that he would ask me about life in general, and which intrigued Shanae. And so it came about that they met. We got them together. I got them together. And so I was very curious for Shanae to meet him, because one of Shanae's greatest gifts is her listening ability. I think my son, because he wasn't a real good speaker, a real good communicator, people would have a tendency to be impatient with him. They wouldn't keep up with waiting for him to answer their questions, and they would try to finish his sentences for him, that kind of thing. And I knew Shanae had the patience and the curiosity and the desire to really, really actively listen to him. And so I was anxious to get them together. And that began this journey with the two of them that turned out remarkably well. They had a connection right away. And part of that connection, I know, in terms of my son, was because he's very discerning. He saw in Shanae right away how incredibly intelligent she is, how interested, genuinely interested she was in him and his life. And so he listened back, and he wanted to answer her questions. And they had this energy together almost immediately, I would say. And I could see for maybe one of the first times the energy that he could bring to a relationship and even a simple conversation. It was amazing. As a mom, I had concerns about my son relating and connecting sometimes with people. And probably a lot of mothers of teenage sons feel that way. But, you know, I'm a mom, and I was concerned, and I wanted him to be able to connect with more than me or his family, or, you know, maybe one or two of his friends, to be able to connect in a way that he could discover things through communication, and grow and learn that way. He had a tendency to get information, and it would go into his brain and it would stay there. He didn't solve problems with dialogue and back and forth with anybody. If he said something, it comes out more of a complete thought. And I think Shanae showed him more of that process, of that give and take with the questions, the probing questions that she would ask him. And he trusted her. Absolutely. Witnessing Shanae and my son and their interaction and their communication, I really learned more about what he was capable of. And he would make choices, and he would say more than, you know, one or two word answers to questions. And I think that part of communication is almost a habit. So I learned a little bit from listening to them about maybe the kinds of questions that wouldn't maybe naturally come to me, but do to Shanae. And so he and I had better communication after that. And I think he felt more confident in his own ability to carry, you know, his side of a chat with someone too. So there were definitely results from their interactions. When I witnessed Sage being able to communicate on that level and more on that level, I had more confidence in him. It was the choices he was making made me actually, it warmed my little heart to see him able to share with somebody and connect like that. And it gave me a better idea about how capable he really is. He's a smart kid. And so if Shanae had been anybody other than very intelligent right back, he would have stopped listening. And the other thing that I have to say about Shanae and my son is that he thinks she's the funniest person on the planet. And they would just fall out laughing at each other. And he appreciates that in someone so much. And that humor and that laughter really brought joy to me to witness, but also to him, just to experience that with a friend, you know, they're friends. I'd like to relay this one story that really brought a lot of this together for me, witnessing it. My son is in the jazz choir at the high school, and he was performing, and my husband and daughter and we were all there, and Shanae had called me and said, I'm coming to this performance. And I was so excited. And so he didn't know or wasn't sure that she was going to be there. So here we are sitting almost in the front row. And you can see these kids, these high school kids, walking out on the stage. There's a dozen of them. And Sage is scanning the audience, looking for his family. And he finds me, and he looks, okay, there's mom. And he looks, dad, okay, there's sister. And then he looks. And I was just watching his face. And he landed on Shanae, and his eyes lit up. And his smile just lit up the room. You couldn't have scripted that. That look on his face was like, she really came, you know, she wanted to see me. And it was so special. And it just showed me there the kind of genuine connection that they have. It was beautiful. On a personal level with Shanae and our friendship, I think of what Shanae has as the gift of Shanae. That's what I call it. And the gift of Shanae has to do with finding and being your best self. We've been on that path for a while now, and I know my life is different and better and more focused, and I live with more intention than I did before I met Shanae. I've noticed with my son a couple of times where he's communicated with Shanae and asked her, he's the one that's gone to her and asked for help. And maybe one time it was about communicating with other people. It's, you know, what do you say when you don't know somebody, but you may want to know them? How do you break the ice? How do you start a conversation out of nothing? And even him asking those questions to her, going to her, not necessarily me or his dad, speaks to his trust in her and what he believes he'll get from her. I think that having Shanae in my life, and I think my son having Shanae in his life, has given us a framework and a foundation that we had before, but it's been pulled together better now. It makes sense, especially to me, about where I need to go and the choices that I need to make and how I go about making those decisions. And for Sage, I know it has to do with the connectedness that he knows is possible, you know, with other human beings now, because of his interactions with her. It's all good, and it's all about being our best selves, and it has everything to do with the gift of Shanae.